And with the obligatory coffee, welcome to the stream. Oh, that's nice. Sometimes you get a cup of coffee that's just right. Although I'm fairly sure they've changed the formula of that coffee a little bit, because there's a fine black powder in it that wasn't there before. So, dots, and more dots, and going dotty, and dots before there are your eyes, and all these jokes. Make your own up. I'm sure there's plenty of scope for puns of that kind. So I am going to carry on with this. See how far we get tonight. So, letter D I believe I am working on, which is number 11. Interestingly, hexadecimal format until you get to H. Then it's not. What would that be? Septadecimal? Yeah, septadecimal. 17, wouldn't it? Not 16. It's amazing how compact numbers are when you count differently. So I was thinking just then, you count from 1 to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You count in binary, that's 1024. Counting hexadecimal, and a bit less than 512, I think. Hello, Wolfie. Good evening. Welcome this evening. You got any puns to go with the dotty title this evening? Yeah, so weird things just come to my mind, like counting in binary. 1, 2. Would it be? It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can't do this without using my fingers. 7, 8. Weird things, binary counting. Of course, generally speaking, that's the way a lot of computers count. I do say a lot because I'm sure that there'll be some that don't count in that way. And then you've got quantum computers that count everything at the same time. Anyway. Right, I am looking at this and thinking, yeah, and here. That's where I'm looking for. Let's start putting some dots on. Okay, I like that one. That's I like that thing. Yeah, it's a bit like. I suppose you can kind of say that about anything. It's kind of like, I play Minecraft. It's a strategy game. My strategy is to win. I quite like it. Yeah, so far you're winning. That's good. What game are you playing then this evening? I keep thinking I ought to have another play at Fortress Craft Evolved, but I haven't actually sort of got myself into the mood of playing that game again for a while. I could do with getting the expansion pack for it as well. Okay. That kind of reminds me of these people that used to play Cookie. Was it Cookie Clicker or something like that? Yeah, I can't remember what it was actually called, but yeah. Lost Technology 1.3. Yeah, okay. Another game I've heard about. And I was about to say, I'm not sure I'd enjoy a game where you don't do anything and everything's automated. And then I was thinking, but that's how I play Minecraft. You automate all the things so that you don't have to do it. And the fun bit is doing the automation. Once it's done, then it's kind of, well, I'm bored now. Let's do something else. Yeah, you don't do once it's all automated. You don't actually do anything with the automation. Two to 3 or 2.3. Okay. That on Steam, is it? I know these days at one time I used to like having the CD. Even CDs are old these days, aren't they? I was going to say I like having the CD. Even CDs are old. I mean, I can remember when games came on 5-inch floppy disks. That was the ones that you didn't type in yourself. And then 3.5-inch floppy disks, then CDs, then DVDs. Now they're all downloads, of course. At one time I wouldn't have thought about having a download game. I'd have wanted the physical CD, and these days I don't want the physical CD. I want it on Steam so that I can download it. And if I load my PC and build a new one, I just install Steam and I've got all my games available again, which is something which is immensely attractive these days. Ooh, blimey, yeah, expensive shipping there. It's I don't mind paying money for games that are good. I don't like paying money for games that aren't, or games that, you know, half an hour and the £40 or well, €40. So I kind of, you know, that sort of money. I've got to have games that last hundreds of hours. I was just thinking then, actually, the first game that no, it wasn't. Now, I was about to say something that isn't strictly true, but I was about to say my first game that on a computer, and it actually wasn't, because my first computer was a Commodore PET computer. You did play games on that, and I actually back then wrote some simple games, and but the first computer I ever built was it's actually a mainframe, believe it or not, but it was a mainframe because it had cards plugged into a backplane. What would be called a motherboard these days, but they were the motherboard had next to intelligence on it, and by a company called Microton. That was back when this was back before the ZX80, which I know is back before you were born, probably, Wolfie. And that computer, when I built it, had a massive, absolutely massive memory of 0.5 kilobyte. And yeah, you did hear me right, it was 0.5 kilobyte. Half of that, so 1/4 of a kilobyte, was the video RAM, because it was shared. So the first game I played on that computer fit it in 1/4 of a K, 256 bytes, and it was Asteroids. So that's a game from history, but 256 bytes. These days you're talking gigabytes, and yeah, gigabytes to have any sort of game. It's amazing the difference. And play that game for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And there was another one very similar, fit in the same sort of space. You wanted Battlefield because it's your childhood game. Yeah. I don't know about childhood games, because computer, well, would I be about 14 when computers started to be a thing? So they're not exactly childhood games. It was kind of, I was working, I guess, before things, but yeah. I was working when I got my first computer. Had to be, because I had to pay for it. And then make it with the microtome. But the games I remember, the Infocom adventure games, the text adventure games. And I remember those because they had absolutely fantastic pictures. You know, in the game, the pictures were absolutely fantastic. Nobody else could see them, but they that series of at the time they were obviously world famous, and I did have. He says, I wonder if they're available on somewhere like Steam. Yeah, Zork 1, Zork 2, Zork 3. I was about to say the original dungeon game. It's not. The original dungeon it was called, I think, was programmed on a mainframe in a university. And it was a multi-user game as well. It was a single-user, multi-user game. Because the mainframe would have lots of terminals on it. You could... So if you were in a university, I can't remember, it might be somewhere like University of Surrey, something like that. That was available, and it was only available out of university hours, so from about 8 o'clock at night onwards. And you had to connect it to it over the university network, which you could get into if you had the capability. And I played it a couple of times, and Zork, which is Zork 1, or the original Zork, was effectively a port of that game from it was, I think it ran on a DEC mainframe computer, VAX. Oh, actually it would have been a PDP-11 back then. And yeah, and I was sort of hooked by then. You love automation on Minecraft? Yeah, so do I. Have I played Sky Factory? I've played some Skyblocks, but I don't think I've played Sky Factory. Well, I certainly haven't played Sky Factory 3, which is out now. Modern Skyblock. I might have played 2. I mean, I was about to say I've played the original Skyblocks, the FTB variants with equivalent exchange. They're quite fun to play. I'm not sure. You'll have heard of Direwolf, of course. I watch Direwolf every day. He's obviously been playing Sky Factory 3, and it's not. I've enjoyed watching it, but it's not prompted me to actually play it yet. There is nothing vanilla about Sky Factory. Nothing at all. Well, I suppose there's vanilla crafting table in there, and it's vanilla cobblestone. But that's about it. Yeah, I think it's a great sort of concept, and to some extent, I don't know. I was about to say I'm not sure. I mean, the one thing I'm not that bothered about in Minecraft is mining, but there again, the mining itself is a little bit of fun. Especially when you start using the mods and you sort of, you're mining a 3x3 block each time and that sort of thing. But I kind of like the idea of the magic crops in Sky Factory. For the resources. I was watching Direwolf on his live streams. Playing there was an alternative Skyblock and with a different mechanism, and I'm not quite sure I enjoyed that particular different mechanism of getting the materials. It seemed a little bit more of an alchemy type thing, and it seemed a little bit more convoluted. Not that sort of growing plants that give you redstone and things like that. Essence is particularly realistic, shall we say, but there again, genetic engineering, it might well be something that's possible. I didn't think you could actually automate killing the dragon. the Ender Dragon. I thought that was, I won't say impossible to do, but extremely difficult. Yeah, I had seen the chickens and bees. I mean, bees were the original magic resources, weren't they? The bees, the forestry bees, with when they started sort of generating materials from those, having to breed the bees and things, and I don't mind it, shall we say, but I've never been particularly a fan of the bee breeding mechanic. It's I mean, some people like it. I kind of don't so much. For some reason, the plants kind of interest me more than bee breeding, and chickens are the same. I mean, chickens and bees, what's the difference really? One clucks, one buzzes, and that's about it. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of Sky Factory, isn't it? If you don't automate it, then it's a real grind. I mean, the whole idea is everything is automated, and at the point where you can auto-craft anything is at the point where you've finished, really. I can understand the bee breeding. I mean, it's like the chicken breeding, you know. It's a little bit sort of yes. I was about to say, I mean, there's plant breeding in some of the sky blocks as well, isn't there? So, you know, you breed plants. You breed, what would it be? Something like, I don't know, a cauliflower and an orange and a carrot to get gold or something. You know, white and yellow to get white and orange to get yellow. Cheap for stuff. Yeah, I suppose it. Well, potentially, yeah. I think what I think about that is it kind of didn't really add anything different to the. You had the bee breeding originally, and breeding chickens is a bit like breeding the bees. Kind of just as awkward to understand sometimes why two things. I mean, what? Smart chickens and something else give you. Don't quite follow why, but I'm not saying that the author copied it. I'm kind of saying that it feels very much similar thing. You know, bee breeding, even the plant breeding, and the chicken breeding. They're kind of the same thing. Magic crops seem to be slightly different to me. So. And I think one of the annoying things about bee breeding, which I suppose the chickens don't give you, was you always had to find queens. You know, they say the princesses. You know, you got, when you bred the princess and the drone, you got a queen and you got lots of drones, but you never got a princess. So you only ever collect them, modify them. You couldn't actually ever sort of create them, and that was kind of annoying. Although, having said which, with Gendustry, I think it is, isn't it? That lets you make it less hard. I think you can change sort of drones into princesses with that, can't you? I think, but I'm trying. This is too shiny and it's quite hard to see. Oh, that's better. It's with Minecraft, watching Direwolf is kind of suits my play style as well, which is partly why I watch him. And also I have played, I was about to say all these mod packs, And I used to, before there was such a thing as mod packs, when I was putting my own collection of mods together, if you like, to create a pack to play, I tended to actually pick the same ones that Direwolf did as well, because his playstyle matches mine. It's the automation thing again. He loves automating. I love automating, and these days I do tend to play his packs when he brings them out. Although the current pack he's got, I've not touched. I've just had no real interest in playing Minecraft for about a year. I played Fortress Craft Evolved for a few months. That's kind of. It's not Minecraft. It's nothing like Minecraft, but it's the same style of play in that it's all automated. Everything's automated. In fact, that's Factorio as well. So there's. They're kind of. I was about to say they're kind of the majority of the game types. Like those are adventure games. So things like the Cyan games. He says being completely unable to remember the name of any of the Cyan games. They are world famous games, and I cannot even remember the name of one of them. Oh, that is annoying. Because they released a new one not so long ago. It was, relatively speaking, it was a Kickstarter, which I backed, and I got a copy. And I haven't finished it. And one of the things about the Cyan games is I don't think I've ever finished one of them. Ever. I got so far through, and I absolutely loved playing them, and kept playing them and on, but I don't think I've ever actually finished one of the games. And I can sort of see them in my own mind, with the pictures, the worlds, and some of the names like Gen and that's the name, the only one I can think of at the moment, and I cannot remember the names of the games. They even did an online MMO, I suppose, and it wasn't that massive, which only lasted for a relatively short period of time, and it was I used to love playing that. And the last day, I remember the last day of it because there were thousands of people that were just stood around in the underground empire, and they stood there, and that was the day they switched the servers off, and people were just stood there until the server connection went off, and it was an extremely sad day in a way. Was that, and there was something about that, playing a massive multiplayer game like that where you didn't kill anybody. It was all adventure and cooperative and things like that. And unfortunately, they didn't get enough players to pay for the game to keep it going. I think it's available now as. It's fan operated now, shall we say. There's sort of fans which operate the servers and create worlds and things, but I haven't actually played it since the day they turned it off. What do they call them? I cannot remember. It's about 5 or 6 games in the series now, and I cannot remember the name of even one of them. And they were kind of, they were a world famous company as well because of these games. They were the benchmark games against which any other company had to sort of measure up against. phenomenally successful games, and yet they're a relatively small company now. Oh dear, that's a pity. I've never played Minecraft multi-user. He says, trying to remember if I've I've never played Minecraft multi-user, but I have with multiple users. But I have played multi-user. I've got a server set in the corner. I guess technically these days they call it a cloud server, and I can run up virtual machines, and I run the Minecraft worlds up on that and connect to that from the client, because it offloads the server processing then onto the server. Kind of goes with the name, which helps with the performance, especially when you get lots of automation. But I've never actually played it with another player. Lady Zara has no interest in playing it, which is a pity because it would be quite fun to play. Okay. Mine isn't actually. Mine's not all that big. It's what's it got? It's not an i5. It can't be because it's only got 2 cores, and so it must predate the i series. Although having said which, I've got an i7 in mine, and I built the server after in my PC, and I built the server after that. So I'm kind of wondering why it didn't have sort of like an i5 in it or an i3. But when I first built it, I had it running the Windows Home Server, and that was doing it was then doing 2 jobs, and one of them was doing the backup for all the machines, which is quite a useful thing, because you can do a bare metal restore with it, and the other one, it was running my music server. Excuse me a moment. Sorry about that. Had a call come in on the Amazon Echo. You've got a quad core, i5, yeah. And it's broken. No, that's not very good. I was saying, what's wrong with it? I was saying, yeah, I ran Windows Home Server on it for a while, and I wasn't pushing it by any means. And so what I eventually did was install Unix on it, and then I ran a Windows virtual machine. So the server's actually running as the Windows server's running as a virtual machine. The music server's running as a virtual machine, then there's about 3 or 4 of the virtual machines on there. How a server works? Depends what kind of server. Well, how does a server work? Like a desktop machine. If you're talking about Windows servers, it is the only real difference with a server is it sort of is optimized more to move data around than it is to run graphical applications, and that's kind of it. And if you're talking about Unix, then a server usually has no graphics capability. It's what they call headless, so it's not intended to run with a screen and keyboard. Well, screen and keyboard usually. And that's, other than that, there is real no difference. A desktop machine can run as a server. You can run a server application like a database or a web server. So the distinction these days is minimal, generally speaking. When you start talking about hardware, you get into things like Xeon processors for servers rather than the i7s, for example, for a couple of reasons. And one is they are more suited towards that sort of the sort of workload that a server does, which is shifting data, and there's not a lot of graphical capability in it. In those, so you get things like the Xeons which don't have the multimedia instruction sets and things like that, which the desktop computers do. It has a lot of security. There isn't a lot. I mean, you get security-wise. I mean, obviously you've got a lot in the operating systems, with firewalls and these sorts of things. But a server is a computer. Unless they have things. I mean, what you sometimes will get, and you get it on laptops as well, where you've to put a password in order to even get the thing to boot. And a BIOS password and these sorts of things, and they're encrypted disks. But generally speaking, if you can get a computer into the BIOS or whatever the equivalent is, and you just jump the disks, jump the disk contents, reinstall an operating system, and forget what was there before, and you can carry on from that. Okay. Standard server's a little bit of a, because there isn't a server standard as such. If you like, server standards are either they are blades in a big motherboard in a big rack, or the tiny 1U, 2U high devices tend to have lots of power supplies. For redundancy, there's a lot more redundancy stuff built in. But you take a server, you put a graphics card in it, you can run it as a desktop computer. So it's, unless you start talking about things that are things like they're not the Sun Microsystems computers, and there you've got processors which probably wouldn't run. In some of the older machines anyway, that wouldn't run Windows, for example. They might run Unix or Linux. And then you get the IBM computers, the mainframes, which have got their own sort of processor architecture in, and again, they won't run anything else. But I'd be kind of surprised if you couldn't run a form of Linux on whatever the machine is. Of course, being a server, it'll probably eat power and be very noisy. That's the server class machines. The idea of a lot of those is they sit in a data center, or at least a computer room, and the noise from having fans forcing air through them at 1,000 miles an hour, you don't care about. But in a home environment, that's usually not acceptable. They're usually really too noisy. Yeah. I'm trying to think what sort of security they put onto it. These sorts of things. You have BIOS locks. So you've got a security chip. It's encrypted, so everything is encrypted. Even the boot sectors are encrypted. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to put some form of key into it, whether it's a physical key or a password type key. I cannot think of anything in server class machines. I don't mess about with what would be termed server class machines these days. Most of the innovation in that sort of area is all about encryption and the different architectures that you would have to run lots of virtual machines. But I kind of understand what you're saying. It's not a normal desktop. Yeah, and I can. But I kind of can't really understand. I mean, literally, I would have expected that if you could get to what would be the BIOS, and it's not BIOS, it's not called BIOS in the big machines these days, but into that same low-level machine operating state, I would expect you to be able to turn off a number of those protections, or they become irrelevant when you're not running an operating system that makes use of them. But you've got the machine in front of you. I don't, so anything I say is completely meaningless, really, in that respect. I mean, I was kind of thinking about the sorts of machines that banks use, financial transactions, things like that, and most of their security is cryptographic. The thing that you probably need to get at you can't install Windows on it, but you can install TeamViewer. That kind of. I'm kind of thinking that what you may have got there is a virtual machine host, because you'd need things like in this case Microsoft Hypervisor or the equivalent, and you're talking to the server at a level below the operating system, so you can attach to the virtual machines. And when you fire up a machine like that, even if you have a screen on it, you don't necessarily get anything. You can't easily install something like Windows because you actually need things like the hypervisor operating software. Something I've never played with. I don't know anything about because I haven't dealt with hypervisor. Hypervisor is a term, but it's also a class. Other manufacturers of these types of machines call them different things as well. But it's a kind of a way of attaching to the underlying machine, so you can manage the virtual machines that are running on it and their operating systems. And your disks are all partitioned and operated in a completely different structure to what would be a normal machine. That maybe is the sort of thing that you've got a difficulty with. I don't know whether that kind of machine can actually be configured to run as a normal, in quotes, desktop type machine. No idea. Because it is architected in a completely different way. because it's meant to run multiple containers all in parallel. Potentially, Wolfie, potentially. Don't have a lot of time to play games, but that's one of the nice things about Linux and things like Minecraft that run on Linux is the fact that you can relatively easily just fire up a machine and install install a server for games like this. It's done. So what would you want to do? Play cooperatively, or play against each other. See who gets who gets further in front. Oh, running the big pipelines. They have a fascinating thing. Especially, in the States where they use a gas turbine, industrial gas generators, or to everybody else a jet engine, but it's not, to actually pump oil. And heat it up as well, so they can pump it. 1.2 million gallon, $1 million of oil. Okay. That's... I don't know. I was about to say that sounds a lot, but I actually don't know if it is. 1.2 million dollars. Given that I've no idea, whether that's a lot or not. I know it sounds a lot, but it's a bit like saying £1 million of gold, and that's a relatively small amount. And oil is quite an expensive commodity, isn't it? You know what? I just think I kind of am more impressed by somebody shifting 1 million barrels of oil per second than $1 million per second of oil. I'm not quite sure whether they're the same or not. Yeah. I'm kind of, this, large quantities. When I started my career a long time ago, I was working associated with long distance telephony, and you had it was just coming to mind. You've got sort of what they had back then. I'm just trying to find something that's comparable of size, and I can't really. Actually, I can. Something like this. You used to have coaxial cables that were about that thick, so about the thickness of that, which would be carrying something like 1,000 phone calls on a piece of cable that size. And that back then was a lot. These days, that's not, it's nothing, isn't 1,000 phone calls. These days, you'd be talking about millions of phone calls on a fibre optic cable. But back then, it was coaxial cable. That's a long time ago. And I'm just thinking, that was one of those things, like an impressive number. And you're thinking, millions of gallons is, or millions of barrels, and per second. You sort of just trying to think, it's the either the speed of that it has to be, or sort of the size of the pipelines that you need to shift that much oil. Is Yeah, they've got to do it. They've got to keep it warm as well, haven't they? To keep the thing flowing. And I guess part of the getting it there fast is so it doesn't cool in the pipeline and start going. It goes sticky, I believe, and it gets really hard to pump and shift. It's amazing what I look at sometimes. And yet some of these pipelines are thousands of miles long. Amazing things. Mind you, there's so much hidden these days in the world. I don't mean hidden as in secret type hidden. I mean sort of just hidden. You're talking about there, shifting that much. You get water. I mean, in the UK, water reservoirs, massive things, intakes to the water system that's sort of 30 or 40 feet across. That's the pipe, and the pumps that shift that amount of volume, and then sort of the pump all day, and the water level goes down about that much, in the reservoir, and just the quantities. And I saw some pictures or some video on YouTube of the building around London, an orbital pipeline that goes all the way around London to transport water. And that thing, they're building it, and it's something like about 20 feet diameter. And when it's finished, that thing will be full of water flowing at an incredible rate, and it's out of sight, hidden as in it's below ground. And I once went to visit a power station in Wales, Festiniog, I think it is. It's a hydroelectric power station, and when they want power, they open the valves at the top, and the pipe up there is something like about 10 feet across, and the water that just comes thundering down. It takes about six seconds to hit the turbines at the bottom, and in another 3 seconds they're generating megawatts of power, and it's just sort of kind of amazing sort of things like that that you just have no concept of. And yeah, I understand it's oil just out of the ground. I think I don't know about where your dad's working, but in America, where they're pumping the oil across the country, the pumps I mentioned were driven by the gas turbines, and the gas turbines burn the oil out of the pipeline that they're pumping to pump, so they feed themselves before they pump it. It's an interesting thing. But yeah, just all incredible things like that. Just I get fascinated by, a pipeline network or a hydroelectric power station that, in 9 seconds it goes from 0 to 200 megawatts of power. And the control networks, I've visited one in the UK, the National Electric Network. They have at least one grid control station. I don't know anything more about it than that, but I visited that one, and at a flick of a switch, and these are the sorts of things that fascinate me. The flick of a switch, literally, like a flick of a switch or a click of a mouse, they turn a power station on, or they turn it off, and that could be a gigawatt of power suddenly is available or isn't available, and it sounds. There's so much complexity in all the planning that they do to be able to provide electricity. You kind of just don't give any concept of, it's a generator running somewhere, and it's not as simple as just turning a generator on. They have to plan to if it's a steam powered, it takes so long to heat the steam in order to bring the generator online, and they have to be able to guess an hour in or 2 hours in advance of when they want the power to be able to turn, these things on. It's an amazing sort of. I just get fascinated by those sorts of stories of things, and just how much ingenuity there is in things, things like the hydroelectric power station, which is, its job is there so that they can turn it on in 9 seconds. If there's a sudden loss of power somewhere, a power station goes off the network, they can turn that capacity on. That's what its job is for. It's for that emergency power when they just go, bang, I want power now. And amazing thing. And of course the same thing happens across the world. And get the continent and England, or France in particular, I believe, sort of share power. So we export power and import power across the network in a dirty great big cable or cables. Sorry, I do go off at some real tangents, don't I? You never know what you're going to hear about on this string, do you? Talking about grid control centres and big pipelines, and a moment not so long ago we were talking about computer games. And interesting, the thought just crossed my mind. You've just been talking about power stations and megawatts of power and things, and I'm playing on and off Factorio with the nuclear generators, and the fact that you have to, they don't throttle, they don't work with the other power sources in the game, and you've got to manage them to get the most out of them. And you think, managing a power network. Amazing what computer games will teach you. How to manage a nuclear power network. I suppose that sort of fascination I've got is kind of why I like adventure games. If I go into like an old castle and there's a door, I'll wonder what's behind the door. Or there's a dark tunnel, there's no lights in it. What's down there? I kind of want to explore to find out, and secret passages sort of fascinate me for the same reason. That's probably why I like adventure games, because that's about exploring. I don't have a great interest in shooting things. Doom is an adventure game where you shoot things, and it's the adventure game bit that I enjoy the most. And that's probably it's how my fascinations with things sort of interact with each other, I guess. But I don't fantastically have an interest in history, but history, of course, you had things like the castles, which are so different to how things are these days. Oh, having said which, take something like a hotel or Disneyland or Disney World, and those places have hidden elevators, hidden rooms, hidden passageways. They're hidden from the general public, not from the staff. And it's always kind of, what goes on behind there? There is an elevator there, because you can see something about it, and where does that go? And these, like a lot of buildings have multiple basements, and it's what goes on down there. The public elevators go to the ground floor, and yet the private elevators go 2 or 3 more levels, and I find this sort of thing. Okay, I shall take your word for it. I'm not up in that sort of history. I don't have a great interest in history for history. I mean, the sort of history that sort of says, this is World War II, and remembering that sort of history is important, yes. But sort of generally speaking, history is not something I've got a great interest in at all. So I wouldn't actually know whether it's hilarious, real, fake, or whatever. I mean, that's what they say, isn't it? The history books are written by the victors. They all do across there, yes they are. Okay. Wasn't that also about the Holy Wars, the Knights, was it Knights Templar and things like that? There is a lot of stuff done in the name of gods, God or gods, whoever you believe in, that I don't understand sometimes. But I'm not about to get into that on a stream. That's not a subject for streaming. At least not on this stream anyway. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I can't follow those last two comments. You go to the toilet. Tell me when you get back. And in the meantime, I shall do some more of these dots. Don't know who, if anybody, is watching. If you are, good evening. Welcome to the studio, to the stream. I call this place the studio. Feel free to say hello in chat if you wish to do so. If you don't, then that's all right. You don't have to. Join in the conversation if you want. I'm kind of not doing anything fantastically skillful, I don't think, here, but this is kind of the sort of thing do occasionally when I want to just have a rest from doing the other crafts that I get involved in, which is a heck of a lot of them. Even on stream, I think I do about 6 or 7 different things. From time to time, we sort of alternate them around. And this is a nice way of just sort of kicking back, if you like. There's some music playing in the background which you're listening to and I can hear, and I get to say more or less anything I like whilst I'm streaming, and as you can hear, the subjects range considerably from computer games to computers to oil pipelines to all sorts of things. So, you know, it's there's always something, not always, there's mostly something different. I've got to be honest, sometimes I don't feel like saying a great deal, and it probably isn't as interesting as it should be. And it's not the sort of thing I really should tell you, because then you don't want to come back. But come back anyway. Say hello. We might be, next time it might be carving, it might be pyrography, it could be scraperboard. It may even be airbrushing or glass engraving or anything. There's a heck of a lot of stuff that we do on this stream of different types of art and crafting to produce that art. So if you like to see a variety of things, this is certainly one of the places to do it. I don't actually know on Twitch of any other streamers that actually do the variety of stuff that we do. And there are some that, you know, like the artists which may do pastels and oil paints and pencil and things like that. But they're working within just that range of media. You know, I'm doing wood carving, glass engraving, scraper board, punchcraft, which is working with thread, chainmail, working with metal rings, rug making, working with wool. We've even done soldering and making it, making doorbells or making a quadcopter or a 3D printer. And we've done. What else have we done? I can't think of what else we did, but a complete range of different range. Where did that come from? A complete range of different things. It's kind of. I think I'm unique on Twitch in that respect. Your cardboard is broken. Your keyboard is broken. Yeah, or you just put your fingers in the wrong place. It's. I don't know if you touch type for Incredible Wolfie. I do. And usually when I'm touch typing, I don't always look at the screen. I certainly don't look at the keyboard, but I don't always look at the screen. And just occasionally, I'll put my hands down on the keyboard and use my right hand for some reason, but I don't get it in the right position. The home keys, as they're called, and I'll be staring out the window typing, and I've got my fingers in the wrong place on the keyboard, and so what comes out looks like gibberish. It's encoded, I guess, to be actually it's being ciphered. But anyway, just terminology. It's completely the wrong thing. And if I got both hands out, it becomes almost impossible to read until you realise if you just shift all the letters one place to the left, it makes sense. But then you look back and I've got a page of stuff which I've written while staring out the window that I've got to retype because I had my fingers in the wrong place. Okay. I keep meaning to sort of try out some of these. Well, they tend to be sold as ergonomic keyboards, but they're like coding keyboards where you can type with just one hand, and depending on the combination of keys that you press, you get different letters, and that's supposed to be extremely high-speed typing. I use ergonomic keyboards because otherwise I get wrist ache when I'm typing. Same reason why I use a trackball rather than a mouse. And so some of these sorts of things I kind of find fascinating and keep looking at and trying to think whether to actually try them out or not. So, believe it or not, which isn't very hard, I've been streaming for almost an hour tonight, and I still don't look to have done very much on this image. Must have placed hundreds of dots by now. You were watching Cosmos yesterday, right? Yeah. Cosmological timescales. Everything, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, was it something like about 60 years ago was the first flight of an aeroplane, and see that one? No, it must be. I must start wrong. What was it I'm thinking of? Was it television? I can't remember. No, it can't be that. It's not that long ago anyway. Whatever it is, I'm trying to think. There was a 50-year anniversary in the last 10 years of something sort of fairly phenomenal in terms of technology. But if you just think about sort of things like flight isn't that old, relatively speaking, and we've had Concorde and we've gone to the moon, and the pace is just accelerating in terms of what things are, how things are done. Electronics is, you've got Moore's law, which doubles power capacity in every so many years, and it's just mind-blowing in a way. What even a few years ago you just couldn't conceive of, and now is commonplace. I can remember the first, mobile telephones. When the mobile telephones were in cars, and there were radio telephones there, not mobile telephones, and it was a radio transmitter that just happened to be in a car that could connect to the telephone network, and it was a rather large box as well. And these days you carry about the capability in your pocket with as much power as what a desktop computer had only a few years ago, and it's in your pocket and it's running off a battery, and it lasts 12 hours or 20 hours, and it's just mind-blowing. Yeah, it is, isn't it? When you look at cosmological time, if you sort of scale it down into human timescales, it's it puts perspective on. A blink of the eye, and you sort of miss the space age in that sort of calendar. That's Carl Sagan, isn't it, with Cosmos? Now it might have. You may be watching a modern version of Cosmos, eh? He's got the voice for it, hasn't he, Morgan Freeman? He has the right sort of voice for that sort of thing. I was just thinking. Then I used to watch in the UK, The Sky at Night with Patrick Moore. The longest running programme in the UK, Sky at Night. I don't know if it's still on. No idea, and I don't watch it anymore, but I used to watch that quite a bit. But yeah, Morgan Freeman, great voice for that sort of thing. Another one would have been things like Walter Cronkite. He had a good voice for that sort of thing as well. We've occasionally, one or two times, gone to, is it Disney World or Disneyland? The one in Florida, in the States, and one of the rides there is just as you go in. There's that big golf ball, got a big ball, and there's actually a ride inside it, and it used to be narrated by Walter Cronkite, I think it was, and his voice just fit the narration and the story amazingly, especially when you got to the top and it was a stardom. And a few years ago they replaced it with somebody else, and it just wasn't the same after that. It just didn't sound epic anymore. It sort of just sounded like somebody reading the story, and it just didn't seem as. You love the universe. Yeah. There's so much fascinating about it. I mean, you've probably come across the formula for intelligent life, which kind of basically says there is some out there. There has to be. It's almost impossible that there couldn't be, and yet the numbers are just so amazing out there. There's thousands of them. You sort of go, if you assume a millionth of this and a millionth of that and a thousandth and 100 millionths of that and a billionth of this and the number you started with was the number of stars, that still means that there's billions of stars with life on them. Not stars, but planets. Just the quantity of it and the size. I mean, the bit that I find really hard to get my mind around in a way is that the universe is expanding. And now that implies that it's expanding into something. But there isn't anything for it to expand into because the universe is the thing. Now that's a weird concept to get your mind around. Yeah, stars are suns, yeah. That always used to be the trick question, the pub quiz. What's the nearest star to Earth? That big red one just up there, you know, the sun. "93 million miles, 8 point something light seconds. Yes, universe is a fascinating thing. Whatever you consider about it, you know, light. You turn a light on and it's light, and you think, yeah, but space is so vast that the stars that the stars that you're looking at may not even be there. Well, they aren't where they were when you're looking at them anyway, but they might not even exist anymore. They could have blown up. But you won't know for about another 40,000 years because the light is travelling. You kind of you can understand the concept of sort of, you know, a hose where you turn the water on and turn it off, and you get this sort of bit of water that sort of shoots out the end. But you just can't conceive of light being the same thing, you know. And it's shot off and it keeps going, and it may have stopped, but it still keeps. There's still this bit that keeps going until it hits your eyes. So that bit of light that hits your eyes left a star billions of years ago, but it was actually in contact with that star. You've got something in your eyes that was in the middle of a star at billions of degrees a few billion years ago. That's absolutely... Yeah, addresses. Yeah. I think I do not know whether it is true or not. But one of the sayings is, or one of the things is, you know, chessboard, 8x8, 64 squares. They talk about, you know, put a grain of sand on the first square, then double it on the next square, and then double it again on the next square. And they talk about there being not enough particles in the universe to put on the last square. Now that's 2 to the 65, and yet that's a conceivable number. And if it really is true that there's not enough particles, they certainly talk about not enough sand in the world to put on that last square. It's just this kind of inconceivable thing, but the number 2 to the 65 is perfectly conceivable. It's not even the largest number known, because of course that's the Googleplex. Yet they talk about things like internet addresses, where, you know, 64-bit addresses may not be enough in the future to address all the things on the internet. And you're kind of thinking, if 2 to the 65 is more than all the grains of sand in the world, that means in the future you're going to have more devices than there are grains of sand. Which kind of makes me wonder whether the original thing about there being, you know, the number being so large, it was wrong, but yeah, bubbles. And I mean, once you start going into sort of, I mean, just as an aside thought, the astronomical photography, and the way in which they take it, it's absolutely fascinating when you see pictures of galaxies and things. Yeah, once you start into that, then you start into things like the multiverse, multiple universes, and things like, I think there's a suggestion that space is 9-dimensional. Is it 10 dimensions? And yet some of the dimensions are just so tiny that they're just ignored for the most part. And yet, if the Big Bang, if that was what it was, had happened in a slightly different way, there could be six dimensions, and it would make sense to whoever was living there. And the other thing about the n-dimensional space that we've got is all the dimensions are at right angles to each other, and that really is a hard concept to get your mind around. I mean, even 4 dimensions. Now, there's a 4th dimension at right angles to the other 3. I just can't conceive of that in my own mind. You just can't. I don't have the imagination to do that, and yet you get people like Carl Sagan, perhaps, or I'm trying to think of maybe even Einstein, or the fella. Oh, can't remember his name now. In the wheelchair, who wrote the famous books. I cannot remember his name, but just, you know, these people that have the mind and the imagination to sort of, really the mathematicians, I suppose, as well, who can imagine things like 9-dimensional space and how it works, and you know, how it's arranged and these sorts of things. It's just they're just unbelievable people. Not as in they can't believe them, I just, you know, their capabilities, their intellect to be able to imagine that sort of thing is just so beyond my understanding as to how they could possibly manage to do it. Is Well, having said all of that, then of course we've just been talking about the cosmos, the universe, everything that's out there, the incredibly large. But you can equally go the opposite direction into the incredibly small. Where on the scale of the smallest things people have been looking at, our planet is as large as what we perceive the universe, or whatever the biggest thing is that we know about. Is it universes? Universes contain galaxies, but there are multiple. Anyway, going the other way, the smallest possible particles that that exist, and there might be smaller, and just shrinking it the other way. That's an incredible story as well. It rivals the cosmological story. Is that subatomic story? And again, the people that can visualize what goes on at that level, and the really confusing things like quarks, colour quarks. So there's up and down quarks. I don't understand, they're just names to me. But they're kind of fascinating names. You get this up quark, down quark, you get a colour, and there's 6. And then there's the anti ones. But I can't remember them. No idea what they are, it's just a name to me, but it's just a fascinating thing. And how they can sort of, I don't know, come up with a theory of them existing and then prove that they actually do, and they are potentially, I don't know whether they have the potential to see them, if seeing makes any sense at that sort of size. I think they see them by the effect they have on other things, but and the mathematicians that make sense of all of that, they generate the theories that predict these things that people have no idea actually exist, but prove that they do because of the predictions and the maths. I kind of enjoyed maths at school, but the sort of maths that these guys do just is so absolutely unimaginable to me anyway. Pure coincidence. Pure coincidence, incredible Wolfie. But things like that happen occasionally. On the programs that you watch, it's amazing, isn't it, how much different the program is when they get the right music to go with the story that they're telling. It can change something that would be sound like a boring subject into this sort of really incredible story because they've got the epic music to go with it. But in this case, the music is just what Pretzel Rocks is playing, because that's where the music is coming from. That's who we have to thank for there being music on this stream, is Pretzel Rocks, who have granted the license for us to be able to broadcast it. There's quite a few pieces of music that I like listening to. We were talking about space there. There's a few space themes which I find absolutely fascinating. I can't remember all of them now, but just as an example, things like the Star Trek theme songs really have this. Well, for me anyway, they really have this feeling of exploration and the vastness of space and being out there, and the sort of music like that, which tells its own story and sort of gives you this sort of impression of how fantastic it all is. Yeah, music is an incredible invention. So is sliced bread, but and here's another incredible thought for you. What would life be like if there had been if music hadn't been invented? And when you've thought about that, tell me how you'd know if music, because if music hadn't been invented, how would you know what it would be like without it? Because you've never had it. That's a weird kind of philosophical thing that blows your mind sometimes. It's a bit like the time travel dilemmas. You go back in time and change something, but how would you know you'd change something if you went back in time and changed it? Because it wouldn't have happened, so how would you know you changed it? Right, I'm looking on here now to see if there's any more letter D. There's at least one up here. One reason why I don't throw all the dots away as soon as I've used them is because you keep coming across the odd one that you missed. Despite maybe looking extremely carefully for them, you don't always see them. And doing this on purpose. Well, getting all philosophical and that's just the way my mind works sometimes. Thinking some of these things, it just flits around from silly thing to silly thing in a way. But I kind of enjoy it. Streaming, when I don't often do this sort of thing whilst flit about like that while I'm streaming. I'm usually talking more about what I'm doing, but it's kind of fun sometimes to just let your mind wander and come up with all these weird things. There's another letter D right down there. Of course, I might be, I was about to say I might be talking to myself while I'm doing it, but I know in this particular case you were listening, but I mean, weird thoughts is there is no way normally that I would, if there wasn't a camera and a microphone running, there's no way I'd stand at this test doing this and just talk to myself like I'm doing now, but that's precisely what I'm doing. I'm stood at this desk doing this, talking to myself, because the only interaction, of course, is you typing back. And but to all intents and purposes, I'm just kind of talking to myself. It's a bit like a presentation that you sort of practice before a big presentation. When you're talking to yourself, and I'm doing it live. And there may be nobody out there at any time. You could easily sort of just walk out of the room for half an hour and come back, Wolfie, and I wouldn't know. And yet, I'm kind of talking to you and anybody else who's listening as well. Am I from a different universe? Well, I kind of wonder that occasionally. Wouldn't it be fascinating though if you were? All the things that you might know. Or maybe you are and you just don't know it. I mean, have you ever had a dream which you're in the dream and you actually don't know whether you're awake or not? you know, or you're in a dream and you know you're awake, but you think you're asleep, or you know, that gets a real weird thing. What happened? What would it be if you thought, what we're doing now is I'm in a dream now. I'm dreaming that I'm talking to you. How do I know I'm not? And when I go to sleep tonight and start dreaming, is that because I've woken up and that's what's actually happening? And this bit's the dream. Now I know that's kind of that's kind of like that film whose name has escaped me with I was about to say the name of the film and it's gone completely. Is it? How do you know, Wolfie? How do you know? That's the weird thing, is you actually have absolutely no way of knowing that that you listening to me now isn't a dream. And the fact that I'm here thinking that I'm talking to you, maybe you're the dream. Maybe I'm the one that's dreaming and you're not really there. It's a weird. I mean, I've had dreams before now where I've woken up and not actually been sure whether I'm still asleep or not. You know, if you assume that I know I'm awake now, I've had dreams where I've been in bed, I've been asleep, the dream has been real, I've woken up and not been sure whether I was awake or not, or whether I was still dreaming. Because I've had dreams where I have been thinking I'm awake, and then I wake up and I'm still, and I think, oh, I'm awake now, and then I wake up. And I'm in the bedroom I'm familiar with, but am I dreaming? And it's kind of, it plays about with your mind at times. I don't know, that's the question. I heard something the other day, and I can't remember what it was. It was, no, it wasn't. I remember it was in a fiction book I was reading, but everything that you see is actually your perception of light hitting your eyes. So you don't actually know it exists. Your brain has constructed something that says when this light hits your eyes, this is what it means. But is it really there? It's like the question of what's the colour of grass? Or even, what's the colour of that? I can say that's pink. Okay? But I say that's pink. You in your language will say that's something different. And yet, to you translate that into English, it's pink. So I say pink, and to somebody else who speaks the same language, say pink means the same thing to them. But does it? What happens is, what would have happened if as a child you always called that yellow? For no reason why, it's just, I mean, you literally do call it something different in your language. And yet, so what is pink? Watson. Okay, Watson. Is it Watson or Watson? But okay, I can't pronounce it. But you call it that, I call it pink. Are we talking about the same thing? It's kind of, the language thing is kind of the same thing as, if a child had always been told that that's yellow, then that would be yellow to a child. It's Volson, I can't pronounce it, but that's this colour to you. Definitely not pink. It's that, and that's something I always find weird. I mean, as a concept to get your mind around how that could be yellow. But there's no reason why it can't be yellow. It's just a sound that represents what your eye sees. That's assuming that I see what you see, and we don't actually know whether what you see is the same as what I see. The fact that you know to call that, even if you know to call that pink, doesn't actually mean that I'm seeing the same thing that you are. And I've no idea whether you're actually seeing the same thing that I am. And that's one of the weird things about perceptions. And then I go on to other weird things, like, I don't know if you ever do it naturally in your own language, but sometimes I will go chair, and I think chair. First, my first thought is, am I using the right word and have I spelt it correctly? But yeah, why is a chair called a chair? Why did somebody back in history, and I know it was a different, languages evolve, and ours are Germanic roots, which are from a particular, they go back further in a particular sort of series back to, I don't know, ancient Greek or whatever it is. But why did this thing get called a table, or whatever it is in your own language? It's what is it tablish about this that somebody went, I know, we'll call this a table. So it's just a weird. Okay, fair enough. I wouldn't know. Doesn't matter. It's you always have that in different languages. I don't know too many these days. It's easy enough to fool people like that. But there again, whether it's a swear word or not, same thing really. You could have taught somebody that is what that means, and they wouldn't know the difference. And different terminology. I mean, I'm just you saying that kind of just reminded me then, because I was suddenly thinking of the fact that I used to know a little bit of Danish, but I don't anymore, or not really. And I was suddenly thinking then how and I can't remember who it was, but that's the speech in Germany. Was it Ich bin Berliner? But they said it as Ich bin ein Berliner, which means I'm a sausage, as opposed to somebody from Berlin. Just slight. Okay. I had a friend a long time ago that could speak Danish, and they were telling me about a train journey they were on once in the UK up to York, I think, from London. And they're English, lived in England all their life, born in England, but their family was Danish, so could speak fluent Danish. And for some reason in the train carriage that they were in, there was a couple that were there that were on holiday from Denmark, and they spent the entire journey talking Danish all the way up from London to York, and making lots of disparaging remarks about the people in the carriages and the English in general. And my friend, as they got out at York, basically said to them in fluent Danish as they got out of the carriage together, along the lines of, "You ought to be careful about who is around you when you're talking about people like that." And just walked off, and I gather they just stopped dead dumbfounded, and that's an image that just amuses me somewhat, really. I always there. Okay. There's a I won't say it's famous, but I don't know if you know English television, a program called Coronation Street, and there was one of the characters on there. It kind of became a famous saying for a while. It was the character was a sort of a not very intelligent woman, shall we say, and was played like that, and she wanted to learn French, I think, and somebody had taught her the way to say hello in French was something like "Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir," which of course doesn't mean hello, but they didn't know, and it was kind of it became a famous. When that went out, it was broadcast. It became like a famous sort of thing, but it is that same sort of thing. Anybody can tell you this means something in a different language, and you don't actually know. You either have to believe them and go forward, or find a way of verifying what it is that they've said. But anyway, it's 9:15. That's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I've done all the letter D's on here that I can see at the moment, so and I'm not going to get any more dots out. It's 9:15. It's an hour and 3/4 about since I started broadcasting, so close enough. I'm going to say that's it for tonight. And Incredible Wolfie, thanks for being around. It's been absolutely fascinating covering such a wide range of subjects. I'm going to do my usual advert, which is just to remind people who might be watching, that's assuming anybody is, about the blue box on the bottom. It's all the websites there. The YouTube, which is having the history of Twitch, or my history of Twitch, uploaded onto it. Twitter and Facebook. I tweeted when I was going live tonight. Come and think up the puns to do with Dotty, for example, which is an English name, or it was in the past. Facebook, of course. I actually must do an update for Facebook, because it keeps reminding me I haven't done one for a while. So maybe do one of those. And of course the kind of important one, the Etsy shop, which would help to support the channel. So anybody out there that might be interested in the chainmail jewellery, I must get some of the other things up. I don't know. Maybe I'll put the police box on there one of these days when I can remember to do it. Upcycled coffee jar. Or maybe some pyrography. Don't know, we'll see. I keep thinking I will have to do some of that, and it may never ever get any of it done until I get to doing some glasswork, perhaps, and then maybe that'll go up there. But check out Etsy. Proceeds of sales do help the channel, as does the subscription button at the top. Anybody that's watching, I'd ask you to consider subscribing. It does help out the channel to get subscriptions. To do with all sorts of things, whether it's buying these sorts of things to do on stream, or it's wood, or chisels, or very sharp chisels. Why does everybody like people working with sharp chisels? I am convinced that people watch me carve just to see if I'm going to cut myself, but anyway, maybe I ought to do stuff with the knives, they're even sharper. I don't know. Thanks everybody for watching. I should be live hopefully tomorrow night. May do another one, a bit of this, I don't know. Well, I'll have to wait until tomorrow night. I don't think I'm in the particular mood for doing art type things at the moment, so we may not be doing pyrography. It may well be chainmail, for example, or if not this. Something that's not particularly messy. I'm not in the mood for messy at the moment. And by messy I mean whether it's engraving or lots of things out, so we shall see. Already quit? Yeah, I'm quitting already. See, I quit every night. I'm a quitter. Can't get away from that, can you? You have to quit at some point, whether you fall down flat or give up gracefully, which is what I'm doing. I'm going to finish. I've only drunk half my coffee, and it's a shame to waste coffee. I'm going to make some I'm going to make some popcorn. Yeah, I'm going to make. We had a cat called Popcorn once. How's that for a complete change of subject? And that's because when he was born, he was born with the sound that a popcorn makes when it cracks as it opens. So I don't know why, but he was. And that's why he got the name Popcorn. He popped out. Tomorrow night, hopefully live, somewhere around 1900 to 2000 hours British summertime. That's 1800 hours to 1900, or 6 till 7 PM GMT, UTC. They're both the same anyway. And we will be broadcasting for an hour to 2 hours, depending on just when we start. So sometime around 9 o'clock we'll stop, or shortly after 9, like it is now, 15:15. So I'm going to say thank you again for watching, and Incredible Wolfie, thank you very much for joining me this evening in chat, and anybody else that's watching. Look forward to seeing you all on the next stream. Bye for now.
This mountain's never ending, just seems so much to push through. We'll inspire the message, we'll press on within. This mountain's never ending. Just